Welcome to the Private Practice Pro podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping therapists cultivate success. Here's your host, Kelley Stevens.
This podcast is sponsored by Simple Practice. I've been using Simple Practice since 2016, which has helped me run a smooth and profitable private practice over the years. It has simplified everything from scheduling to billing, giving me a better balance between the work I'm so passionate about and the family time I'm not willing to miss out on. Check out the episode notes to get a free 2-month trial of Simple Practice, my preferred all-in-one HIPAA-compliant solution. Welcome back, everybody, to the Private Practice Pro podcast. Today, I have two of my dear friends, former roommates, I would say. Roommate seems like a funny word. And we are going to talk about private practice. Obviously, we're going to talk about IOPs. We're going to talk about multiple streams of income. We're going to talk about addiction and family work. We're going to get into all of that today. So Kimberly and Lyle, I'm just going to let you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves. Can you tell us, first of all, where you're sitting, so where in the world you are, and then a little bit about each of your practices?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Mom.
Okay. Thank you for having us, Kelley. So good to see you always. My name is Kimberly Wick, and I have a private practice in Westlake Village. I've been in practice since about 2000, and my specialty is working with people who have loved ones that have mental health and addiction. So families that are struggling with a loved one's mental health and addiction, individuals who have the same situation. And really, I fell into it very organically, had experiences with addiction in my own family system, and joined Al-Anon eons ago, and just started seeing people that were in that similar situation as I had been, and have been running a support group for free, open to the community for about 13 years. And like that, it's been a labor of love, and it's made my private practice a really fun part of my life.
I can't believe it's been 13 years. That means I've known you more than 13 years. So I forgot to say when I introduced you guys that you're mother and daughter too. So
yeah,
Kimberly and Lyle are also a mother and daughter, both therapists. So Lyle, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm at my home office in Thousand Oaks, California, and I've been in private practice since, I think since 2020. And I focus on substance abuse, codependency, and launching adults. And I also have Bridge the Gap therapeutic mentoring services, which is helping people launch and real-time support. So, and then my mom and I do some work together that we're getting started with that we're really excited about. And yeah.
Okay, so we're going to get into both of those things first, I think, in terms of talking about the current project you guys have on, because that's really, I think, a huge part of why I wanted to have you guys on and to be able to share with other therapists kind of some of the cool ways that you could get involved and all of that. So, but I feel like we kind of got to stay how we know each other and talk a little bit about that. So I was trying to remember today who I met first. And obviously who I met first was Kimberly. So, and we met working at an adolescent treatment center, I think, right? Did we meet before that?
No, we met at Engage.
And then, so we met at Engage, and then we worked together. And I think we just became friends. Like, we started going on walks, or I don't... It just feels like a long time ago.
You were an associate working at Engage, and we started going on hikes and walks, and we would talk about you becoming licensed and my private practice and our work at Engage. And I think you were about to be offered the marketing position. We talked about like what that looked like for you in your practice. And we just became soul sisters.
100%. Yeah. Now that I think back on that time, it was right before I decided whether or not I should take that marketing job. And I remember you saying, there's going to be no better experience than this,
Yes.
And
because for all of us, referrals are everything.
Yeah.
And getting to know people in our local communities, it's like being able to have a vehicle to go meet people, which for you was your job at Engage, and was paramount to like you getting to have that really successful private practice.
Well, and I think about all of our kind of friendships over the last decade of we've spent so many time, all three of us, talking about brainstorming ways to generate referrals for our different businesses, whether that's at one point IOP for you guys, therapeutic mentorship, private practice, and now your newest venture. I feel like we've put our brains together in so many different ways about like, how do we generate clients?
Yes, exactly.
And so, I think that'll be a fun part of today too, is being able to talk a little bit about that. And then, I think we also came full circle. So we've known each other for 13 or so years. And then at one point, I lived with you guys when my current husband, my only husband, when my husband was, I'm saying he's currently my husband because he wasn't my husband then when Sam was my boyfriend. He lived far away. So I lived half the week with him, and then I lived half the week with you guys, which was like the best. I miss it so much. I can't even tell you.
Oh my God. We had so much fun, and Lyle and Sally happened to be at the house, and you were primarily my friend. And then I just remember it started to become one big slumber party, and you guys became really close. And obviously you guys are more aligned in age. And
it was the best. I met as somebody who's married, obviously I live with a guy, I have a son, and I'm about to have another son. I'm like, what in the world? Like, when am I going to watch The Bachelor?
I was just going to say Bachelor Mondays.
So, Lyle, you have two girls, and Kimberly had two girls. You guys are like girl world. Like, I'm over here at boy world, and let me tell you, I don't know what I'm going to, I'm going to have to come stay once a week with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be way better than what I'm doing now. So, okay. So let's talk about your current project. So tell me what you guys are doing together right now.
So we are in the process of developing classes for people who have loved ones with substance abuse or mental health and are just totally in it, trying to figure out what they do, navigate the path to help themselves and their loved ones. And alongside that, we are writing a book of our experience of me getting into recovery and what the experience was like for my mom. So a parallel process.
Yeah.
Also with, tips and tools from a clinician's perspective as well.
I love it.
Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would say that our first class that we're going to launch is, we're not going to call it this, I don't think, but
we might.
When the shit hits the fan and your loved one's going off the rails, what do I need to know? Because I know that when my life felt like it was caving in, I didn't know where to go. Mm-hmm. And I wish I had just had to help me get emotionally organized. You need to know, just an outline format. You need to know these things. And the first 4 things you need to do are these.
Right.
And so the book has been a labor of love also. That's been we've been working on that for 5 years. And we can't wait to not be working on it. But,
you're almost done, I think.
But, we struggled a little bit with that process of just how much of ourselves do we put out there. And we finally decided that in order to really help people, we had to be pretty rigorously honest with, what our own growth needed to look like in order to get well. And in doing that, that started discussions around how can we use what we know now and help more people than just the one person sitting in my office or
Right.
the 10 that show up at the support group. So we got really excited about just starting some interactive classes for people anywhere really that are struggling, and they're all kind of going to play off of each other, hopefully. It's the idea.
I love it. Well, and I think the topic you brought up is an important one for therapists learning to market themselves, is like, how much do you share your own story? And I know that's one thing that you guys have gone back and forth with the book. So, and so if I'm understanding you right, you're kind of saying like you decided to put it all out there.
Well, one of the things I'd like to just comment on, in my experience of being a therapist for as long as I have been and not working in the field of addiction, the first, I don't know, however many years it was before I actually really started to focus in on this. We all, when I went to Antioch, I was taught never say a word about yourself, be a blank slate. And obviously we all have to find our own style in our private practice and our own style in our work. And with addiction, it feels a bit different in that because we have this support group, which for part of that time before Lyle had her daughters, she was running it with me. We felt that there was a lot of help for people in knowing, not every single detail, but in knowing that we've been in the trenches.
Right.
And also we could call them out in a very kind and gentle, appropriate way on, how their fear is causing them to operate their choices. And so I think there's a time and a place. For the book, we decided to be pretty honest about our stories.
Right.
Would we bring that honesty into our work, that level of honesty? It wouldn't be necessary.
Right.
I think it's just enough that people working with us know we've been in the trenches. We're in recovery always because we're always working on ourselves as women.
Right.
And so I just wanted to clarify that.
I think that's great. And maybe so for anyone who's listening to this who maybe doesn't know you guys as well, Lyle, could you share a little bit of your guys' story or how you guys got to where you are now?
Yeah, definitely. I, in my teenage years, just used drugs and alcohol to escape and cope with trauma and big emotions. And we ended up having a big blowout and intervention, and I ended up going to treatment for a year. And then alongside that, earlier in my childhood, my dad struggled with addiction as well and ended up getting sober when I was I think 13 or 14. And so I kind of got it from both angles of having my own challenges and experience it as a family member. And then my mom and I both, separately went on our own journey of not only getting sober for me, but also dealing with all the emotions. And I know, Mom, you can speak to this, but just learning how to set boundaries and then rebuilding our relationship and what that looked like as two people trying to grow and dealing with triggers and changing dynamics and all of that. So that's kind of how we came to land on, okay, we've been through a lot of stuff. Let's take that, since we're so passionate about it in our work, and try and help other people who are in the same situation.
And for you, Lyle, specifically, when did you went to treatment, then obviously went back to school, and when did you have this moment where you're like, okay, I'm going to become a therapist?
So I went to treatment, and then while I was in treatment, it was in Marina Del Rey, and I saw that LMU had CADAC counseling classes. So I was like, oh, I'll get my drug and alcohol certification. I can work in treatment. So I did that. And then I think, honestly, even when I was in my addiction, I was like, oh, I want to be a therapist and help other people, probably wouldn't have been so great at it at the time, but it just further progressed as I got sober and I started, 12-step programs sponsoring other women. And it was a pretty clear trajectory for me of like, I want to turn my challenges and what I've gone through in my life into something that holds purpose in not only helping myself, but like being able to help other people walk through it.
Well, and it's so cool too, because for you, Kim, you went back to being a therapist. I mean, you didn't start out as a therapist, right? So
Exactly.
When in this process did you go back to become a therapist?
I went back after in 1998. I went back to school. I had another career, and I shut my company down after Lyle's dad had gone through renal failure. Or while he was in renal failure, I took some time off. And then when it was time to go back to work, I wanted to do something more meaningful. And I went back to school about 25 years ago. Like
that had to be,
guys,
at that point in
crazy.
time, that had to be the craziest decision. I mean, you were going through so much in your own life to make a major career shift because you were doing something completely different before. I mean, that had to be that's brave,
Well, it was a strategic choice at the time. I had a distribution company for foreign rights for film and TV for all of the years prior to that, and had a blast. But then I had kids, and I was still traveling to Europe, and there were a lot of stresses, and the market changed. And then it was like at the same time, Michael went into renal failure, and so by the time I needed to go back and get a job, which is really, it's so interesting that I needed to go back to work.
Yeah.
And then I went back to school to spend more money.
Yeah.
Michael
I was going to say, needed to go back to work and becoming a therapist and doing your hours. Like, oh, it's hard.
Michael was my biggest fan. I mean, he was the one who said, it's great, you should do it. I wanted to grow older, having a craft that I got better the longer I was in it and the longer I worked on myself, that I just kept getting better at it. And I didn't want to like age out of my profession.
Right.
I also wanted to have a profession that there wasn't a ceiling on how much I could make, and that because I have an MBA and I'm a former business owner, I have always had an interest in growing things. And I wanted to ultimately have the freedom to have a platform to springboard from.
Right.
And I absolutely love our profession because I feel like if we're willing to get creative and to put ourselves out there, we can do anything with our state license and with what we where our own, we talk about pain points, where our own pain points are is where we're growing and where our passions ultimately are.
I completely agree. I mean, I think, we talk about this, and I feel always so lucky that in many ways that I like grew up as a therapist around you, because I feel like I learned from that. I think there's so many people in our industry that do stay stuck or that don't believe that like you could create something else, and it's been fun to see you guys do a lot of different things, and a lot of different types of companies. And maybe Lyle, you could share. So you currently own a company called Bridge the Gap, and which does therapeutic mentorship. But a lot of people listening just might actually not know what that means, just from a business perspective and a therapy perspective. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So when I was in grad school, we were sitting on the couch, probably watching The Bachelor with you. And I'm like, man, with my internship and, school, like I need to make money, and what am I passionate about? And so after brainstorming with you, it was like, okay, I'm going to do mentorship, which essentially is helping individuals in real time apply their therapeutic tools that they've learned from treatment or in the therapy room, needing a little additional support, not with a therapist, but with someone who's therapeutically informed, getting a job, launching, doing all of that stuff. And so we were brainstorming names and Bridge the Gap came up. And
I don't remember this, Lyle. You're saying this,
Oh,
and
yeah,
it feels like I teed it up, but I don't have any recollection of doing this.
Oh my God. I think I was on my way here and I'm like, oh my God, thank God for Kelley.
I don't remember. Maybe I'm having pregnancy brain right now. I mean, in some sense, we've had thousands of conversations about business. So I don't, I guess I'm thinking, and it's been a long time since you were in grad school. So you were getting your licensing hours.
This was just 2018. So I was doing my internship at Boys and Girls Club in grad school. And I started doing all of the mentoring. So, I networked a little bit, was getting clients. Luckily for you, I got my first client and started mentoring. And then as I got busier and things started to grow, I brought on actually my sister, who's an LCSW, to do mentoring. And then from there, I started stepping away from actually doing the mentoring and hiring on mentors.
Right.
So now I don't do the mentoring. I oversee everything. We have an awesome group of mentors. And it's great because I love the in-person therapy work, helping people on a one-to-one basis.
Right.
But I also love the business piece of growing something and being able to like supervise people and help other clinicians learn, because all of our mentors are individuals who are trying to get to licensure.
Right.
So it's cool because this is more experiential work that they get to do.
So maybe explain that too. So like a mentor might take a kid, like young adults, and do what with them?
Yeah. So a mentor, we usually work with teens and young adults, and a mentor could take a young adult to go and apply to jobs if they're struggling with the motivation and need the accountability to actually show up and walk through the mall and hand out resumes. They could do work on executive functioning. So sitting down, taking a syllabus, writing out dates, when things are due, making a plan around that. It could be we've worked alongside their therapists to do exposure work, like if they're struggling to go order a drink at Starbucks because of social anxiety. And oftentimes when it's geared towards the more therapeutic piece versus the executive functioning, we will allow the therapist to tell us what we can be supportive with.
Right. Well, and I think that's the best part with Bridge the Gap clients that I've had as a therapist. It's been nice because like the reality of it is a lot of times I think, our clients aren't seeing us every day. And especially in those teen and young adult clients, for them to be able to have a mentor that they're going out and like writing their homework down and, and then checking in with them over the phone and all of that, it's been huge for a lot of my clients. So I think that's
kind of ties it all together, because your client, and I have this with my clients where they leave the room and you're like, okay, I hope you do what we planned.
You're probably not going to.
I wasn't the kid who was going to do that, even with my best intention, so it's kind of having that person to help them get it done and make change.
There's also a family component to Bridge the Gap.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Which is really great because where appropriate, like if the clients of Bridge the Gap have family members that are close, they will jump into family mentoring.
Love it.
And that's amazing because, as we all know, some of our biggest triggers are our family members, and helping the families to learn new language skills and setting boundaries and just all of those things to support the growth of the Bridge the Gap client is so important.
100%. Well, and I think it brings up a good point, Lyle, too, for you as a newer mom. I guess not super new, but like newer mom, same as me.
Yeah.
Like it has allowed you in many ways to step back from as much one-to-one work, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, completely. I mean, because it's easier with kids to do like computer work and make phone calls than have to be on the ground in person 24/7. So, I mean, I'm a huge supporter of private practice because you get to make your own schedule and the additional source of like a half passive income really helps to where you get to be more present. Like I get to be with my girls more and be much more flexible with my schedule. And that's just, I mean, priceless.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. We've had so many conversations about this. And I think sometimes people don't think about running a mentorship company. Not that it's not without its challenges, obviously.
Oh my God.
I know that it's,
tons.
But, everything comes with their challenges. So
exactly. Yeah. All business.
Hey, therapists. Are you listening to the show and thinking, I really want to launch my own private practice, but I have no idea where to start? Make sure to check out Kelley's Private Practice Roadmap course. In the course, Kelley gives you the exact steps you need to open your own thriving practice. You can find the link below in the show notes.
So let's talk a little bit about the book. So you guys have gone through this journey together, and we briefly mentioned, obviously, that you have a sister too, Sally, who is also a therapist, maybe with a slightly different specialty. Remind me now, or explain to the audience, what is Sally's main specialty?
Sally does a lot of work with perfectionism, a lot of work with teens and young adults. She also works with chronic illness. So specifically, I'd say the specialty with that is type 1 diabetes. But she, across the board, supports a lot of people who struggle with any chronic illness.
And she's been working with eating disorders as well.
That's right.
Oh, that's great. I forgot about that. So what's it like being in a family where all three of you are therapists?
Well, I have a husband as a therapist too.
Oh my God, I forgot about Joey.
I just can't escape it. It's fun. I mean, it's really cool. I know. I remember growing up, people were like, oh my God, your mom's a therapist. Like, how cool. And I'm like, I don't, like we talk about emotions. It's a level of accountability you don't want as a teenager. But it's fun because we all have like this emotional intelligence that we've worked hard to get. And sometimes I'm like, I can't believe I'm a therapist. Like, did that just come out of my mouth? So you're definitely held accountable, which is good, right? So,
Kim, did you think that both of your kids were going to become therapists?
No idea. No, I never did think that they were going to become therapists. Sally always wanted to be a large animal veterinarian. And so for Sally going back to do that 5th year of college so she could go and get her master's in social work was a big turnaround. And I do remember the day that Lyle called me and said, I know what I want to do, early into her sobriety. And I did because at Antioch, I grew so much going through that program. I was so excited for Lyle to have that path.
Yeah.
And I love it. I mean, we bounce things off each other all the time. And, if there's a bump, we have good skill set to use. And it's really fun.
I always think that like when you're in a family of therapists, I mean, I'm married to a psychiatrist, obviously.
Yeah.
People like assume that you're not going to have any of your own issues.
Oh God, no.
But we all know, that might not be the case.
Totally. Yeah, you just maybe you deal with them differently or have the awareness of them. But no, sometimes again, it's like we're all human. I'm like, I can't believe I'm a therapist. Wow.
I have the same feeling. Or sometimes I'm like, I should probably know better on this one. But
right, exactly.
Okay, so how did you guys decide to write the book? So you go through this huge thing in your life, obviously, many things, many journeys, and then you decide, okay, we're going to write a book about it. So when did that come about? Who was the one? Because you co-wrote it together. So which one of you was like, let's do it?
It kind of happened organically. I had started something a long time ago that was like a point of purchase pamphlet of, the shit hits the fan, here's what you need to know, and designed after my own experiences, having gone through this with Lyle and her father.
Right.
And then one day Lyle was over, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, and I was asking for some help with something, and she started talking about her own experiences and giving me some feedback about what I had written. And it just was like so much fun to now all of a sudden have someone that I could bounce things off of and dialogue with. And then we both thought about, taking what was existing and bringing her into the fold and really doing a chronological look at our side-by-side experiences, mine from the parent experience and hers from the young adult, really, experience, 17 on, or even younger. Actually, we start the book when she's a child. And we just kept chipping away because we had day jobs. So, we met every Monday and for years met every Monday. And here we are.
What do you wish you guys had known about writing a book as a therapist before you started?
I think, it's interesting because I think in grad school, most of us are told like, oh, you don't share your own stuff, right? And so I think what's been a hump for me to get over, because obviously the book is pretty exposing. It's like me sharing a lot of parts of myself that had a lot of shame related to them that I've had to work through. And I think bumping up with the idea of like, oh, well, as a professional, you don't expose your stuff, which I don't really live by that mindset. But this is on a different level because it's really airing my dirty laundry.
Right.
So I think I guess before writing it, having a reality check of like what that looks like. Right. And really how challenging it is, because prior to writing it, it was like, like I'm, whatever.
Right. I'm in recovery, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. But as I got further and further into my journey in my professional life, it's like, oh, it feels really vulnerable. Right. I know it's going to help people, but to put myself out there in this way where it is susceptible to a lot of judgment. Right. And I'm like, what if people wouldn't refer to me or whatever? And, so it's been a really big growth experience to kind of just like, this is who I am and I'm not ashamed of it. And we all have our stuff, whether we choose to share or not. And hopefully it helps someone,
Yeah.
So
I don't know, Kim? That we could have been prepared for how challenging and amazing that this process has been, because getting to a place, for me, when I would read what Lyle had to wrote, sorry, my AirPod fell out. To read what Lyle had to wrote, I was like, it was such a process of having to forgive myself all over again as a mom, and really coming to terms with that I did the very best I could given the circumstances that I was in. And so there is no preparation for coming to that place where we're okay with revealing so much of the darkness that happened and our own imperfections. And, as a mom, things that quite frankly made me cringe, like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. Yeah. So that really was challenging. But honestly, we also had lots of discussions around, why are we doing this? Like, what's the point? If we're not going to get down and dirty and really put it out there, who's it going to help? Right. Because then we're just promoting this Pollyanna view of the two of us and what we went through and how we coped. And people reading it we all know our own secrets, but people reading it are going to be in their own living room or whatnot, not being able to learn that there is no shame to be had. Right. We're all doing the best we can. And if these two women went through this that feels so much like what I'm going through, and they can have the perspective they have, maybe I can get there. So that's all. We really, in doing it, it's been a great process for us and very therapeutic.
Oh, I'm sure.
And we hope it helps.
That's one of your catchphrases is we hope it helps. I like catch myself saying that now all the time. Yeah. It's funny, I'll like say it to clients and I'm like, oh, I'm channeling my inner Kimberly right now. I think the other thing that's so unique about it is how often do a mother-daughter team who have been through addiction, who've been through recovery, who've been through Al-Anon, and then also became therapists and then also decided to share their story. I mean, it's a very unique set of circumstances that you have the lens to look through your past, through your present, and then to be able to share that with people, I think is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's different, which is exciting.
Totally. Well, and I think about a lot of the books and podcasts that we all listen to or talk about, whether it's like the Glennon Doyle Melton one and they talk about their shit. They put it out there. And those are the ones I want to listen to. Like, I don't usually want to listen to the ones where the people are like, here's 3 things that I learned. I want to know like all the messed up stuff,
Exactly.
Completely.
All right. So I always like to end with just asking people, what's one piece of advice that you would give to anyone who's starting out in private practice right now?
Boy, well, for me, the best advice that I got early on, actually not so much early on, but when I moved out to Westlake Village from Los Angeles, I was told that 20% of my time needs to be spent networking. And there's 2 things I would recommend. One is the networking piece is a real deal. Like if there's any anxiety about getting out there, get some therapy for it, get help, because so much of how we become just entrenched in our communities and make friends and have referral bases is just doing it, getting out there, making those calls, going to different events and whatnot. And the other thing that took me a long time to get to was having a niche.
Yeah.
And the importance of just picking something. It's like, if you have 4 things that you like to do and you do, if you pick just one thing to focus on, you still get to do all 4 of them.
Yeah, exactly.
But just to pick a niche and really become expert in that niche, and you're still going to have the outliers who come to see you just because.
Right.
So those are definitely 2 things I think of.
What do you think, Lyle? What piece of advice would you give anyone starting in private practice?
I think just honestly patience and persistence, because it can be so daunting of like, oh my God, I only have 2 clients and wow, I'm doing all this networking, I'm not getting referrals. And I remember you telling me it's like the first 10 are the hardest and then it starts to slowly start flowing. And I think it can be so discouraging when you're networking initially and you're not getting referrals and you're really trying to put yourself out there. It can feel like, I know for me, it was like, I just like, what do I do? Did I go into the wrong career? Is this not going to be a good financial situation for me? And it's just like one step in front of the other, baby steps, making a plan and just chipping away at it. And somehow at some point you'll look back and be like, wow, I have a full practice. And, I just chipped away and I stuck with it. So I think it's just, it's the investment of the patience,
I totally agree with you. And I agree with, I still hold that to be true. The first 10 are the hardest. And we had so many conversations about that for sure.
Yeah, like
where are these people? When are they coming? And then all of a sudden it kind of happens. So if people want to find more info about you guys, where do they go?
So our Instagram is Kimberly and Lyle, and our website is kimberlyandlyle.com.
Perfect. And we'll put all of your info in the show notes for both of your practices and everything. So anyone who wants to find out the information, they can just go there. But thank you guys so much for coming today.
Thank you for having us, Kelley.
Thank you.
Ask Kelley Anything is just around the corner. But first, a word from our sponsor. Stay tuned for Kelley's response to your private practice questions.
Therapists, do you want more clients at your full cash rate? Mentaya is a platform that navigates out-of-network benefits for clients. They get clients on average 70% back on therapy by filing claims and chasing down insurance companies. They handle literally everything so that you can focus on what matters. Click the link in the show notes to learn more and get 1 month free using the code PRO. All right, everyone, welcome back to Ask Kelley Anything. We have a special guest today on Ask Kelley Anything because I got this question from one of our listeners, and I'm going to read it to you now. So here it is. Hey, Kelley, I run an out-of-network practice in Southern California. Most of my clients have out-of-network benefits, but don't submit them. I've heard you talk about Mentaya on your show before, and I'm a bit confused about how it works. Can you explain? So if you've been listening to this show for a while, you might have heard about one of our sponsors, Mentaya, and I want to give you a chance to kind of learn about what they do for out-of-network billing. And instead of trying to explain it myself, I invited my good friend Christine on today to talk a little bit about Mentaya and what they do for out-of-network billing. So welcome, Christine. I'm so excited you're here. Can you tell people, just give us a little background on who you are in relation to Mentaya?
Yes, thanks so much for having me on, Kelley. I am the founder and CEO of Mentaya. I started Mentaya a couple years back to really try to make a difference in the mental health care space. I wanted to help empower therapists to make their full fee, help them with private pay clients, while making mental health care more accessible by using out-of-network benefits to bridge the gap between in-network and private pay therapy for clients.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I feel like this speaks so much to exactly what we talk about on this page. Many of the therapists who follow me or who listen to this podcast are out of network. They're billing cash pay practices, but sometimes want the ability to help their clients get reimbursement. So I thought what might be helpful today would be if you could just kind of walk therapists through, if they're interested in working with Mentaya for some of that out-of-network billing, how the process works kind of step by step.
Yeah. So as a therapist, we sort of help with this process end to end. So let's just walk through a scenario where you have a prospective client. Let's call your client, Sarah. So you have someone named Sarah who's coming to you, who's like, hey, I may be interested in seeing you as a therapist. Let's do an initial consultation call. And inevitably, the topic of fees comes up and they're like, do you take insurance? And then at some point you have to say, no, I don't, but here's my fee. And, I can maybe give you super bills and you might be able to get reimbursed. So instead of having that sort of conversation with Mentaya, we have an instant benefits calculator where you can now say, hey, I don't accept insurance. Here's my full fee. But if you have your insurance card ready, I can just run your benefits through our system and we can see, if you can get reimbursed, how much you can get reimbursed. And people are so shocked to see sometimes that they can get reimbursed 80% on therapy,
right?
Because then doing private pay means I just have to pay the full cash rate and insurance is not going to give me any money back.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of times people don't know. I'm often shocked with my clients when, I'll run them through a benefits calculator and they're like, oh, I actually have out-of-network reimbursement. And they had literally no idea and they really had no intention of checking,
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah, it's great.
So, yeah, this is something that we've seen has helped so many therapists in private practice convert those clients who might be a little on the fence about starting therapy and paying your full fee. But once they see they can get reimbursed, they're like, okay, great. And so now let's say your client, Sarah is like, great, I have these out-of-network benefits. Let's start. Then the next question is, how do I actually use it? Right. And as a therapist, obviously, if you don't want to take insurance, I'm sure part of the reason is you just don't want to deal with any of that. And so Mentaya actually takes care of that for you. So all we have to do, you sign up, you invite your clients, you set up your account, and that takes only a few minutes to do. Once everything is set up, all we need from you is to know when the sessions happened. We can't have clients, submitting their own claims and saying like, oh yeah, I had 10 sessions this week, for example. And so we just need to get from you when the sessions happened, if it's actually happened or if it was a no-show. And there's a couple different ways to do that. You can sync your calendar. You can like add sessions into our calendar. We can even send you a text to say like, hey, we saw that you had the session. Did this actually happen? And you text back yes. And we will just automatically submit the claim to insurance and deal with all of the stuff related to insurance.
And how does it work in terms of payment? So that's one question I get a lot about Mentaya, like who pays Mentaya?
So we, by default, charge the client. We charge them a 5% fee per claim. And on average, clients get reimbursed around 70% back. So it's a no-brainer for them.
Awesome.
As a therapist, you could choose on to take on the fee. Like that is an option we have. But by default, we put it on the client.
Yeah. And I find like, I know with clients, like a lot of times they don't even know they have out-of-network benefits. They don't know this service is available. It's so easy to them. So when paying that 5% fee, like, is so much better than what they thought was going to happen, that like oftentimes it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah. And if they, for example, I know that a lot of therapists give super bills, but what people are shocked to hear is a lot of clients are not submitting these super bills. And so they're leaving thousands of dollars on the table per year on therapy because they just don't know how, or they try and it gets rejected and they just don't want to deal with insurance. Or sometimes they, then go back to the therapist and they're like, can you change this code? Like, I don't really understand. Can you help me with it? And now all of a sudden, now you're involved in it as well.
Yes. No, 100%. It's funny like that you say that. So I'm about to go on maternity leave and I have like a super bill essentially for a breast pump that my insurance will reimburse me for. And it was like $400. Okay. This thing is, the claim has been sitting on my desk for, it's embarrassing how long it has, just because honestly, like I'm a little bit lazy. Like I know I can get reimbursed for it. I need to go on the website and navigate all of it. And it's annoying. And if I could pay 5% of that to just have somebody else handle it as the client, I would, Yeah.
And then you have peace of mind as well to just make sure that it's actually getting tracked.
Done.
You're getting reimbursed. It's not like you submit it and you're like, I don't know. And then 3 months later you get like a rejection. You're like, oh, I have to call the insurance company now.
So then when a client uses Mentaya, does the insurance company send the client the check or the therapist the check?
They send the client the check. So the therapist, you can kind of think of yourself as almost fully removed from the process, aside from letting us know when the sessions happened. And so everything is sort of between us and the client. We work with insurance companies to make sure the client actually gets reimbursed. Work with, as in we kind of force insurance companies to actually reimburse the clients. But it should go directly to them.
Awesome. Yeah, that's one question I get a lot from people. And I think like one thing I like about Mentaya, which it's just easy. So once you're in it and once you're in the cycle of like helping your clients get reimbursed, it takes no time for the therapist. And I think sometimes therapists don't really understand how it works because they're not taking insurance. And what I try to remind therapists of is with Mentaya, you're still out of network. You're still billing your cash pay rate. You're still not taking insurance. Like there's nothing really different that you're doing other than the fact that you're saying, yes, the client came that day. Okay, that's like a yes or no question, really easy, right? And then like the client is getting reimbursed. So the retention of that client, they're more likely to stay a lot longer because they're actually getting some reimbursement.
Exactly. Because I think a lot of times it's hard to tell why a client, churns or stops seeing you. And it can be really subtle. It might not be like, I'm not going to see you anymore. It might be, hey, can we do, instead of twice a week sessions, to once a week, to every other week, to once a month? Like that is a slow churn. But if you are helping your clients make sure they're actually getting reimbursed by insurance, they are now getting this extra money back that they can reinvest back into therapy so that they don't churn off for financial reasons.
Yeah. And a lot of times my clients like won't necessarily even say it. And then like I figure out later, they slowly decreased. Maybe their kid was joining club soccer and they had to allocate money at somewhere else, So I think it's really helpful. Well, this was really helpful, Christine, to be able to give people an overview of the process, because I think it can be a little bit confusing. And I know that if they sign up, so we have a link in the show notes if anyone wants to sign up, and they get 1 month free, right? Pretty sure.
So the platform overall is free to use for the claim submission piece as the client pays for it, but we charge a small monthly fee for the benefits calculator. It's $29 a month, but everyone who's listening here can try it out for free. So you can just try out the entire platform for free for a month.
which is great. And yeah, I think we should really emphasize like that the actual process is free to you. So that's only if you want the benefits calculator, but actually like you're not getting charged, you're not having money taken off of your fee, it's paid by the client. So I think that's a great thing. And anyway, thank you so much, Christine. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you would like to be featured on Ask Kelley Anything, I love getting listener questions from you guys. Anything about private practice goes. And the best way to do that is actually just to give me a call and leave me a question on my voicemail. So I'm going to tell you the phone number right now and make sure to write it down. Here it is, 805-243-8241. I'm looking forward to hearing from you.